I'm going to show you how I create this image on here. I will just move that across here. So this image is a composite of a baby I photographed last week and one of the new digital backdrops. I'm going to grab the two images. This is the backdrop image and then the image of the baby that I photographed last week, which has a similar color tone. I'm going to drag that image across, drop that onto my background image. So what I do is then do free transform. So I do Control T or just go into free transform. I use the shift keys, so when I'm moving and resizing, it doesn't change the perspective of the baby. Once I've got that in position, I'm just going to put a mask over that layer. I'm then going to do an invert mask, so Command I, to basically create the inverted mask that then we can paint back in with our white paintbrush. So here I'm going to grab, I've got my black ones, I'm going to pop over to the white brush, paint the baby in using the white brush, making sure I've got everything covered. So again, just going over that, that is doing a mask over the layer of the baby. Then I invert the mask, Command I, and paint back using my white paintbrush. The black one will erase the layer. So the first thing what I do here is just basically bring the whole baby in, all the edges of that little layer of blanket. So what I find with these composite images is if you do have to think ahead with your photography. You can't just paste any baby into any image. You do have to think, if you want an image that looks cohesive, you want to have a color background and a layer that will come across nicely. So how I photograph them is I have this layer underneath this baby. I knew that it matched this backdrop as well. So that's going to make the masking in and out very easy, and it's going to make her look quite believable when we rub that back and we don't actually have to come up to the edge of her arm or her leg. You can see that that layer of fabric is going to make her look a lot more, I guess, cohesive into that image. So basically I'm using my black brush to rub back that mask layer off now. So if you want to check on your progress, you can always check the backspace key. So I'm just going in nice and close. What I also find with this is looking at the depth of field that has been used or would be used in a complete image of this kind. So when you're running along the edge of that baby, she is actually going to be soft. If she's shot as I would have shot her at f3, 4, her back is going to be a lot softer because her back is about a couple of inches back from the eye where it's sharp in the foreground. So what I find is I'll use a brush that matches the depth of field that I'm trying to achieve where I'm pasting the two images together. So I will, the edging that I'm trying to create is a little bit softer. If you create a hard edge, that's when it can look very pasted in. So you can see the edge of this brush is a little bit softer. It's not a hard, sharp edge. So just, slowly taking your time. This is the bit that takes the time when you're getting the edging right. So I'm just swapping between the brushes. Got my black brush going in for those details around the flower. Sometimes you can erase things off that you don't like. It's a good opportunity to get rid of some of the things in the background that you don't like. So I just come in with that tiny brush and get those little detailed areas. I think it's definitely worth taking the time with the hairline, making sure the hair doesn't look too pasted on. I find bonnets are really easy to mask in because obviously you've got the edge of the bonnet to play with. You don't have to try and create the fluffy edges of hair. I think a baby with very, very fluffy hair would be very difficult. That would really require a different kind of selection of the hair using other techniques that are a little bit complex. I basically just use this technique because it's what I know, and I don't really do anything fancy with lots of hair. So what I'm going to do is move the baby up a little bit using my free transform. My hand is on the shift key so that when I'm moving her, she's not losing her proportion. So I can see with that I've got a little bit of the edging of the little blanket that's come across with her. I want to get rid of that. So I'll just use my black and white brushes to now, this is where you kind of have a bit of an artistic eye where you're painting bits and pieces in and thinking how you can blend that edge in nicely. So with this one, I've got a thin layer that's come across with her. So I'm going to actually use that to layer over the top. So this one here, I'm just coming to that first little bit of shadowing there. You can see where that is actually the edge of that little blanket. Now it's not precise, but I'm going to use my artistic license and create an edge where there maybe wasn't one, or just blend it in nicely with the type of brush and the sharpness of the brushes so you can see the edging. So basically with this, I'm going to move her, I'm just moving her in a little bit. You can see there's a few little bits and pieces I've missed. So I'm going to just get her in the right position. Again, once I get her there, I'm going to make sure that now all those little bits and pieces. So I've got my backspace key, so I've just seen that I've missed a few pieces down the bottom. Make sure I come back down now and erase those out. So we've got all those bits and pieces there. We're coming up nice and close to that edge, because what I'm going to do now, which I think is the key part of making an image believable, is the shadowing. So adding the shadowing into separate parts where this is normally how it would be. So I think as well, lighting is what gives things away. If you're adding in, obviously this image is done for safety, and I really just find that I like to be creative with it, because I have to do it anyway. I may as well get the most out of these composites, because I'm not going to hang a baby in a basket, so I'll be able to play around and get a few different looks if I need to out of one shot. So with this one, you can see I've got a nice edge to that blanket. I'm going to use a layer now to give that shadowing. So she looks a bit pasted in there along the bottom of that blanket. So what I'll do is bring in, I'm just getting those last little bits of edging around her bottom there. I can see that there's a few missing over here. Grab that. So I always think it's always really important about the shadowing. So if you're putting one image into another, the shadowing has to be the same as the destination image. So if you need to add little elements that create that sense of shadowing that wasn't there, but it is now, by using dodge and burn. So the dodge and burn layer is like the darkroom technique of bringing in light and taking away light off an image the way you would in the darkroom. So I'm going to grab another layer. So how I create my dodge and burn layer is create a new layer, go into new layer, I'm going to make soft light, fill it with neutral grey, click that button, okay. So now I'm going to use my black and white brushes at around 8% or 9%. So 9% opacity. So now I've got my black brush. This one I'm going to create my shadowing. So this layer, remember, is underneath the baby. So the layer underneath the baby is going to be a way of creating the shadow. So the shadowing runs along there. This is how the light would normally fall. So I'm going to use, so you can see turning it on and off, how that shadow underneath the blanket makes it look more realistic. So it is really a matter of, I'm going to do another dodge and burn layer, again, soft light, neutral grey, okay, and then I'm going to go to my my burn on my top layer of the baby. So this one's on top of the baby. I just felt like this left hand part was a bit of a highlight, so I want to bring that back. Some other pieces like her bottom, I want to put a bit more shadow on her bottom, the way I would feel if she was naturally sitting in this position. She would have some shadowing on her bottom. So on and off you can see there's a bit more shadowing. Because she was shot on a bed, it's a little bit lighter on her back. So you can kind of, again, I'm trying to create the lighting that would naturally be in this hanging basket, not on the bed that she was on. So this, I'm going to, on my dodge and burn layer, I'm going to fill some of those darker shadows. I don't like really highlights and dark shadows. So I'm bringing a little bit more detail in those shadow areas so it looks a bit soft and yummy. And yeah, I don't really love dark pockets of shadows. So I'm just bringing those back out. So you can see that on and off. Again, that's just personal taste. Some images they work for, and some I just find I like to get rid of them. So coming back out and just sort of reviewing that before we say whether we're happy with that, I think I'm just going to flatten that image and put, I feel like that the baby doesn't quite match the background. So I'm going to run a contrast and saturation layer, an action that I've got that just brings in some nice bright contrast. So I've added that on. I'm now masking that kind of brighten action off. And then I'm going to paint it back in where I feel like it just needs a bit of a push. So around the bottom, I feel like she's nice and bright. I just want the light hitting the bottom of the basket to brighten up. So I've left all these backdrops very plain so that you can add your elements so that they match the image that you're bringing in. So they're very plain. They haven't been played with a lot. It's just a way of bringing in a lot more flexibility. So I'm going to add in a matte vignette. I do like the addition of that sometimes with the baskets. It just creates a bit more of a moody finish to it if it's got a little bit of a vignette. I might also come in and crop that image in a little bit. I feel like she just needs to be in the middle. It's not close enough to the subject, but that's just the way I like to have these images, not too far away. So now that I've got that, I've got the vignette there. It's very slight. I'm going to add in another warm vignette. It's kind of got some red pinkish tones. I've just flattened that, so you can see the warmth coming in from the edges. It's really only going to be a touch because I don't want it to stand out. But yeah, I feel like she's a little bit, she's warmer than the backdrop. So I'm going to put a warm layer over the top. And then I'm going to actually erase it off her because I feel like the backdrop just needed to warm up to be a match for her. This is where you're trying to create a sense that the baby is in the same surroundings as the backdrop. So I'm just going to warm up the backdrop. I'm actually going to erase it off the baby because I feel like the backdrop just needed to be warmed up, but she didn't. So there it is there. It's a warmer. It's taking away that coolness to the backdrop. I feel like it comes together a lot more. It feels like it's a very similar light hitting both subjects. The temperature of light. So we'll bring that back up to about 45 opacity. So that's looking really nice now. So basically now I'll just flatten the image. Again, these are all things that I do and not necessarily what everyone would do. This is something that I do occasionally if I feel like a baby's feeling a bit flat. Sometimes it's hard to get the curve of a baby, so sometimes I might just pop in liquify and pop that little bottom up a tiny bit just to give a nice curve. I don't do it all the time, but it is just a way sometimes we can create that soft curve at the end that just kind of brings it all together softly. So, and there you have it.